Hello, everyone. I'm Paul Granillo, the President and CEO of the Inland Empire Economic Partnership, and welcome to another edition of the IE Working Together. It's my pleasure to welcome Ashish Vaidya, who is the CEO of Growing Inland Achievement. And Ashish has just been a great add to what is, I think, the Inland Empire's number one economic issue, and that is education and the state of education in the Inland Empire. Ashish, welcome.
Thank you, Paul. Happy to be here.
The audience a little bit about yourself. And, again, our target audience are educators and individuals who are creating curriculum, people working in the workforce area. So let them know just what a pro you are.
It's always fun to share a little bit of my journey. Everyone has such a unique journey. So I wouldn't go too far back, but I will share with you, Paul, and the listeners. I came to this country as an international student to pursue my doctorate in economics. I came from India, and I was motivated by two fundamental principles that I still believe in. First one is that this country, America, is the land of opportunity and of intergenerational mobility. And second, no other country has a better higher education system than the United States. So those were the two motivating factors. So I came to California to do my PhD. I was at the University of California, Davis. And then since then, after I finished up my PhD, joined Cal State Los Angeles, right here in Southern California, as a assistant professor of economics in the department. And for the next 3+ decades, my experience and journey has been in public higher education, serving students and serving communities wherever I've been. I've been fortunate to have served at two different Cal States, LA and Channel Islands, and also made my way to Minnesota, where I served as provost and interim president at St. Cloud State, and then at Northern Kentucky University in the Midwest, serving as the president of that university. So my journey has always been in public higher education, because fundamentally I believe that is the roadmap to transforming your life, no matter what your background is. Having access to a quality higher education institution, which California is fortunate to have, both in community colleges and four-year institutions, that is the way that you can lift yourself up. And by doing that, you're also lifting up the communities in which you end up residing. And then about a year and a half ago, GIA came calling, a little over a year and a half ago, GIA came calling and said, we have this unique opportunity to lead an organization in the Inland Empire that connects the dots. That's a cross-sector collaboration across K through 12, community colleges, four-year, and business and industry to create a strong cradle-to-career pipeline. And I was quite intrigued. By the way, I used to live in Claremont when I first moved to Southern California, so i.e. adjacent, if you will, so very familiar with the Inland Empire. And so the opportunity to come back here and serve this region in a different capacity was something that I was very excited about.
And we're glad that you did. So now I've been on the board of Growing Inland Achievement since the beginning. So for people who don't know, really the birth of Growing Inland Achievement came from an opportunity from Governor Brown, the second Governor Brown, who had instituted a program calling for innovation in higher education. And what it required was something that the region wasn't actually very good at, and that was coming together and working together and not against each other. And so we were able to bring back one of the largest grants that was available, and we used that to be the jumping off point for Growing Inland Achievement. And I'm going to let you talk a little bit about your board and who's there. But just so that people know that this is something that I personally believe is absolutely key to the future of the Inland Empire. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about who is GIA?
Yeah, no, in fact, absolutely. And I think Innovation Award is the right way to think about it, because people often underestimate the importance of collaboration, and bringing different stakeholders and different ideas together around a common agenda. And I think the fact that GIA was born as a result of the foresight of people like you and the other founding members of this organization speaks to this notion of innovation. That yes, while we are doing important work in our own lanes, if we want to really make systemic change, we're going to have to sort of put those hats aside and think about the region first, bring the stakeholders together. And so you're absolutely right about how GIA was born. The Governor's Innovation Award set that up and rolling. So just for the listeners, the GIA board came together when the leaders of institutions, both K through 12, 2-year and 4-year, along with, of course, leaders such as yourself, Paul, came together and said, look, we have to think about educational attainment in a very different way. We have to make sure that we think about cradle to career, connecting the dots, and really honing in on cross-sector collaborations. So there were 3 reasons, I think, why I was excited about the work that GIA does. One is I do believe in the importance of collective impact, the idea that you have to bring people together in order to make meaningful change. Second, it's the Inland Empire. It's one that I'm familiar with, that one I call home, I think, when I first moved to Southern California. And the third is the nature of the board. Apart from yourself, we have the president of Cal State San Bernardino, Tomas Morales. We have the chancellor of University of California, Riverside, brand new now, Chancellor Jack Hu. So I'm excited to welcome him to the board. Previous to that, of course, it was Kim Wilcox, one of the founders of GIA as well. We have the 2 community college district chancellors, both San Bernardino and Riverside, Diana Rodriguez and Volda Bisak. We have the 2 county superintendents of schools from San Bernardino, as well as Riverside, Tel Alejandro and Edwin Gomez. We have Michelle Decker from IECF, the Community Foundation. Sheila Thornton leads One Future Coachella, and Henry Shannon, who is the president of Chaffey College. That makes up a unique and a critical aspect of bringing very important leaders together that can actually make a difference in this region. So I've been delighted to work with all of them. Our job as GIA is to work across these sectors to really look at what are the different elements of the education pipeline that needs strengthening, that needs improvement, that needs investing, that needs research, and that's how we swing into action.
So Ashish, let's talk about the numbers. And you and I do this for a living, right? So for the audience, I'm sure most of them are aware, but some may not be, that the Inland Empire, Riverside, and San Bernardino counties, what the census calls the Riverside, Ontario, San Bernardino Metropolitan Statistical Area, is now the 11th largest. We've just passed Boston, Cambridge. We're a couple 100,000 behind Phoenix, and then we'll be in the top 10. So what does that mean? It means we're one of the biggest population centers in the United States. If people remember that the largest is New York, the second is Los Angeles, Chicago, and on down the list. But again, sometimes people don't realize who we are because we don't have a major city. We don't have what would be considered a major airport, as much as we love our Ontario and Palm Springs airports. So we have to tell our story and our narrative. So one of the largest population centers, 4.7, 4.8 million people. But let's talk about the numbers when it comes to baccalaureate attainment, when it comes to associate attainment, when it comes to graduate degree attainment. So can you walk us through that?
Sure. And you made the point very well, Paul, that this is, and I've used this term multiple times, this is a region of consequence, both because of its size, its location, its scale. I mean, the breadth of our area. San Bernardino is the largest county by geography, by area in the country. And we're a growing and a young, diverse population. All these are the strengths that the Inland Empire has. But we're also lagging behind other regions when it comes to post-secondary attainment. In fact, we have amongst the lowest post-secondary attainments for any metro area over 1 million people. So that's the whole reason I think GIA was born. That's the reason why we're all very much in this, embedded in this work. So GIA's, the Inland Empire's baccalaureate attainment rate stands at about 24%, which, by the way, is an improvement over where it was 10 years ago. It was about 19% 10 years ago. So we've made some gradual progress. Now, how does 24% compare? For the California as a whole, it's about 34%. So we're lagging about 10 percentage points behind California. Nationally, the rate is about between 30 to 40%. But quite often, we also compare ourselves to our surrounding counties. Los Angeles is also close to at 35%. Orange County is over 43%. And so this discrepancy in baccalaureate attainment rate also, I think, sends a message to business and employers that maybe there isn't a great deal of skilled talent in our region. And so they are probably more apprehensive about investing in our region and bringing that capital, setting up high demand, high tech jobs that we absolutely need. So that's one of the big reasons why we have to do that. When you add associates to that number, it goes up to about 32 or 33% for the Inland Empire in terms of having an associate's degree or a baccalaureate degree. Still lags behind surrounding counties and the state as a whole. So that's kind of the picture. And I think a big reason is we need to work on improving post-secondary attainment, which is why GIA's strategic plan has that 70% post-secondary attainment, big, bold goal that 70% of adults over 25 will have at least some sort of post-secondary degree or credential of value.
Okay. So you laid out the numbers. In a minute, I'm going to ask you why those numbers are the way they are. But I also want to give some context from the perspective of employers. So employers are always looking for an alignment with the workforce that's available. And if they can't find that alignment, then they're not going to necessarily invest in putting a manufacturing facility in a certain area. It plays out in my world. One of the sectors that isn't in the Inland Empire, there are, of course, one or two, but we're talking about a sector. So this would be a concentration of businesses. Is the tech sector. And the tech sector is the highest paying sector. It's where we create ideas. It's where we create video games. It's where we can create new technologies that are really high value. But because we don't have that workforce, we don't see that investment. So that then affects the entire economy of the region. Because then it makes us dependent on other sectors that may not be as high paying. So GIA, while it is very much focused on education, I believe has to be understood as a part of the economic future and helping create the economic future of the region. And so I want people to really appreciate that this is absolutely critical work that we have to do together. So now I've teed that up, but tell me why, Ashish, why do we have that number at 24%? What are some of the systemic issues that we have to address?
Yeah. Well, there are several, I think, challenges along this pipeline that create this. But I would say if you were to ask me, well, single out one important challenge that we face, it is the fact that our college-going rate, in other words, our high school graduates who go on to 2-year or 4-year institutions, is one of the lowest in the state of California. Only about 52% of our high school graduates go on to pursue either a 2-year or a 4-year degree, and that is at the crux of the problem. And that is one of the reasons we have to really work hard at not only improving some of the other milestones, but making sure that when students graduate from high school, that they have the option available to pursue a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree. This is the proverbial, some people in your audience might know, the A through G requirements for high school graduation. Not every high school district offers that or makes it easily accessible to all the students. And not all the students take advantage of that because it's not a requirement for graduation. So while high school graduation rates in both counties have improved quite a bit, in fact, they are on par with state numbers. Close to 90% of students graduate from high school in both counties on the average, but only slightly more than half of them actually go on to college. So that's one of the fundamental problems that we have to address. But what the literature has shown and research has shown is that it's not just at the high school level that you can have interventions or improvements. You have to look at the entire pipeline, beginning, frankly, with early childhood literacy. We all know, and I think many folks in your audience will probably know, if kids fall behind with third grade reading, regardless of their socioeconomic background, it's going to be hard to make up that difference. If they fall behind in eighth grade math, then getting ready for college level work becomes extremely challenging. Even if they graduate high school, if they have not taken robust and vigorous coursework that prepares them for a CSU or a UC education, they will face challenges and problems there as well. And then, of course, when they get to college, we have to have the right support systems in place so that we can successfully make sure that they graduate in a timely manner. Just access to higher education is not enough. We have to make sure that there are services, programs, supports, so that every student who walks through that door on a college campus knows that the finishing line is there ahead of them and the university is there to support them along the way. Frankly, Paul, the journey doesn't stop there. As we know, this is where businesses and employers have a huge role to play as well, which is to make sure the transition from getting the degree to a livable wage career also exists. And that's why we talked about the high-tech, high-demand, high-wage careers, because if we are churning out the talent in science and cybersecurity and engineering and mathematics, we need the jobs there as well. And I think that's how the system will really create the synergy.
So college going rate is where we need to focus. I think that's all you lay it out there. It's something that everybody has to take responsibility for. Parents need to take responsibility for it. We need to be, um, urging our young people to look at college and community college opportunities, workforce credential opportunities, and then we need to be able to make sure that the pathways are there. So I know that in work in other organizations that I've done, that again, trying to work through some of the, California's education system is huge. And there are misalignments and transfer opportunities from the community colleges to the CSU or the UC. And we've done a lot of work in trying to fix those. I think another piece of the puzzle is also making sure that students can tap into financial aid. Sometimes they think that they or their parents believe that they don't have the economic wherewithal to actually go to college when they do have opportunities. So we need to make sure that we're highlighting those as well. So Ashish, where are you starting? Right. Let's talk about the strategic plan and where what's at the top of the list of things that we need to do as a region to get this to get the numbers where we want them to be.
Yeah, no, and I think that's exactly right. I mean, there is so much, so many things we can focus on that unless we have some targeted approaches, it's going to feel like a real uphill challenge. So what we've laid out in GIA strategic plan, a goal of 70% of working age adults having a degree or credential of value, then is broken down into what are the key elements in the K through 12 space, in the transition from high school to college, in the transition from college, from a community college to 4 year, and then the transition to careers. And I think we have to approach this from a couple of different ways. What GIA is trying to do right now is really hone in on what we are listening and hearing from our community and from the region. So the areas that I think really are rising to the top in the K through 12 space, while there's no question we're going to have to make some impact on third grade reading and eighth grade math, the focus on high school curriculum and making sure that the students across all the districts, as many as possible, have access to the kind of curriculum that gives them a choice. The other thing we haven't spoken directly about, Paul, is this narrative that has taken root in the country for the last decade or so about the value proposition of post-secondary degrees and credentials. That's why we keep talking about credentials and degrees of value. Because while I completely believe that post-secondary attainment does have a very, very strong return on investment, not all degrees and credentials are equally the same way. So we have to be a little conscious. Students and families have to be thinking a little bit more about, well, which line of work do I need to go in? And that doesn't mean you don't go into certain degrees and certain majors, but you should know what are the opportunities that exist once you graduate with that degree or credential. So focusing on degrees and credentials of value is, I think, what we are thinking about very clearly. And opening up the curriculum at the high school graduation stage, especially 9 through 12, so that they can see, all right, there's a pathway. At the end of this, I have the choice. I can go into a 2-year or a 4-year institution. Because if you didn't have that choice, then you are limited by what your opportunities are. So I would say, number one, that focus on successful transition from high school to post-secondary through a rigorous curriculum process. That is number one. Second, and you made reference to it, transfer. So many of our students start at the community college, but then don't successfully transfer to a 4-year institution. At my very first board meeting, I know several board members brought up transfer as a key issue and a challenge. And I feel we have the right people around the table to address that. We are making some great progress in that space. And you'll be hearing more about that in months to come, about how we are really bringing 20 institutions together, 12 community colleges and 4-year institutions in the Inland Empire to work on transforming transfer. Sounds like a bit of a tongue twister there. But they are focused on how we can address transfer, because that's going to be a big, huge benefit to the economy. And then the third piece, Paul, that you and I have talked about is better alignment between business and education. That what is the curriculum? What is being taught in colleges and universities? Are those the skills and competencies that employers really want and need? We still have a mismatch in the labor market between what the supply is and what the demand is, what the skills are that graduates have and what the skills are that they need in order to be successful. So those are the three things I would really think rise to the top of the priority list.
So let's go to your last point there, and that is the future of work. In times past, I think people understood that there were certain careers, and you needed a degree to do this one, and maybe a different degree to do that one. Now, work is completely changing, right? I think no one can open a news article and not see the words AI. Okay, so artificial intelligence is out there, but nobody knows what it is and how it's going to affect the future of work. We know that robots and automated systems are becoming more a reality. Cars can drive themselves pretty soon. So all of that is affecting the job market. How are you trying to, and I know the answer because we're doing it together, but how do we, again, bridge that gap between what the employer needs and what the education system is training? How do we do that?
Yeah. Well, I think there are some ways in which that can happen. And I can think of at least two things that we need to both embrace and scale within the region. The first is, and something that I've really believed in quite a bit, and I have to say that many of our institutions locally and regionally are doing some of that. And that is that curriculum that is being, and I use that term in the broadest sense. That's essentially whether it's a baccalaureate program, a certificate, a credential, or an associate's degree, it doesn't really matter, right? It's all curriculum. It's all the learning enterprise, if you will. And the first thing that occurs to me is that traditionally and historically, universities have used a very inward looking strategy to design and develop curriculum. And that is changing, and it has to change even more rapidly. And by that I mean that we have to embrace the idea that curriculum should be co-designed, co-developed, and even co-delivered with help from business and industry partners. And as like I say, this is actually happening. It's happening more in the professional schools, business, healthcare, nursing, and so on and so forth. But it must be more widespread so that students really feel the connection between what they're learning in the classroom and what is likely that they're going to face in the workplace. And so I believe that this idea of co-development and co-design can be very powerful in really aligning what the skills of the future are and what the curriculum is being developed. I would also say, and I know I've been in that space for many, many years myself, colleges and universities have to adopt a more agile approach to curriculum development. You can't take 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years to come up with a new program, a certificate, or degree. It has to be a lot faster than that because of how rapidly things are changing. But then the other element that I think is very critical we should not ignore is the integration of work-based learning in curriculum. And I mean across the spectrum. What is work-based learning? It is a connection between the structured learning that happens in the classroom and real-world experiences that happen in the business and workplace. Things like apprenticeships, internships, and other kinds of things. And the more of that we make available to students, not just in a few majors, but across the board, the stronger the connection will be between what our students are learning at colleges and universities and what the business and industry requires. And by the way, Paul, I just add, that journey is not just for those who are currently in college. That journey is important for those who have left, have a degree, because there is upskilling and reskilling that's going to be needed. And so we don't stop when the student graduates college. We have to think about lifelong learning, because those kinds of things, you could be a 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old, even older, and thinking about, what do I need to learn to keep up with the pace of what's happening? And we need to make those opportunities available really from whatever age to lifelong learning, because I think that never stops.
And I would say, from the perspective of our employer community, that very much is a reality within their companies, that you just cannot stop learning. Things are moving too quickly. Technology is changing too fast, and you need to keep up with it. And I would say the employer community is incentivizing and giving individuals opportunities to do that. And we have to make sure that the next generation of employees understands that that's going to be the way they're going to have to look at their career, because if they don't, others are going to step over them with that knowledge. So it's just a new paradigm that I think we need to prepare people for. So Ashish, we've talked about degrees. We touched a little bit on certificates and credentials, but we're at 24% baccalaureate attainment. So that means that a lot of the people in the workforce in Riverside and San Bernardino counties might not have that baccalaureate degree, but they're going to need some type of continued training. So can you talk a little bit about the 70% goal and how it applies to credentials and certificates?
Yeah, yes, it's a very good question. I think, for the longest time, we only focused on associate's degrees and higher, which means, you get the associates, you get a baccalaureate, you get a graduate degree, maybe a master's, maybe an MBA, even a PhD or a professional doctorate. And by the way, we do need the full spectrum of those degree programs within the Indian Empire. And I want to be clear that it is not, there is no zero-sum game here. Depending on what the demand is. When you speak to the healthcare professionals, Paul, they will talk about a physician shortage. They will talk about a nursing shortage. They will talk about a shortage in occupational therapists. They will talk a shortage about, a variety of things. So we have to really evaluate the labor market needs, both current and future, in the totality, and then try and best map what kinds of skills are we producing? What kinds of degrees and credentials are we producing collectively within our post-secondary institutions, so that there is a better alignment between what the jobs that are needed and what is actually being produced. We are exploring, with the help of many research institutes and others, to really come up with what is a credential of value really mean. College Futures Foundation has, as you know, Paul, we're both familiar with that organization. They have funded some research that shows that unless a certificate is at least 1 year in length, and at least it leads to upward economic mobility, it is not considered a certificate or credential of value. And I think that's a worthwhile definition. You can take a 3-month certificate program in Arctic studies. I'm making things up. But if that doesn't lead to you getting a better job or raising your income, is it really a credential of value? So we have to think really about what are those certificates and credentials of value that actually allow you to move up your economic ladder, get a promotion, get something now in a higher paying opportunity within your workplace. And that's how we're going to measure whether it's a degree or credential of value. So we're not saying none of them. We're looking at those that actually allow, and so tracking jobs and tracking alumni and where they are with those will allow us to better do this. And some of these new opportunity indexes that are showing which ones actually lead to better return on investment that are being offered by our community colleges and foreign institutions will give us a better guide to how we can spread the word of which credentials and certificates will actually generate a good return on investment.
You're a graduate of the Regional Leadership Academy, and you and I had the opportunity to tour a highly automated facility, literally 500 or more robots, and just the level of knowledge that somebody would have to work in that facility to deal with the various technologies that make it work means that they have to they've got to study. And again, not to have a baccalaureate degree necessarily, but certainly the knowledge to make sure that not just a highly automated, but highly valuable system is able to work. So I think that is a good example of what we're talking about. So thank you for sharing about that. So Ashish, as we wind down here, what do you need from the wider listening audience? How can they be a part of this? It can't be just the board of GIA and a few others. It needs to be the entire community working on this. So how do we do that?
Yeah. Well, and that is the $64 million question, isn't it? But I'll share a couple of things, Paul, that resonate with me. And number one, for the listeners, I would say, first and foremost, embrace this notion that the Inland Empire is a region of consequence, that we are more powerful, more significant, and more consequential when we think of ourselves as one unified region rather than two separate counties trying to do their own thing. There is a tremendous amount of power and strength in thinking as a region. We can flex our muscles together. We can have a unified voice across many issues. And I think that's going to be the first and critical step, that when we think of ourselves as a unified region, with a unified purpose and a vision to lift up this region and create inclusive prosperity, it can be a very strong message. And frankly, Paul, it can be a national model for how regions rise up together. So I think that's the first thing that I would share with your listeners to say, let's embrace this idea, because that concept is the first ingredient, I think, to lots of other successes. The second thing is, I think GIA strategic plan, which, as you know, was developed with stakeholders, with input from a variety of people across both counties, across the spectrum. We talk to educators, we talk to families, we talk to business and employees. It's a bold plan, but it's a roadmap to how this region can lift itself up through post-secondary attainment. And my request to the listeners is, join us in this journey. Offer your ideas. Come up with solutions. Be engaged, and find ways. You can come, whether it's through the board, or whether it's through the institutions, or whether it's directly to the team at GIA, or even to me. We welcome people, because when we lock arms together, special things are going to happen. And the last thing I would say is, I think we have a unique opportunity. I've talked to so many people in the Inland Empire, and the commitment and the drive, there is a chip on our shoulder. And the chip is, we want to get better. We want to be the best at getting better. And I think with that message, we can really make quite a bit of a change in this region, and fulfill the hopes and aspirations of not just the current folks, but the future families and kids who are going to be in the pipeline.
That's great, Ashish. I want to thank you for joining us, and I most especially want to thank you for being a steward leader and really caring about the region and helping us to take on what I think, again, is a critical part of the puzzle that is the economy of the Inland Empire. And we need to get our education piece of that right. And so I'm just glad that you're leading GIA. So again, I want to thank Ashish for joining us, for all the hard work that he and the team at GIA are doing. Stay tuned as we continue this podcast, which is focused on the Inland Empire working together. Take care.